Well, hello YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. Alright, so for the past couple of weeks, I've been discussing the whole born this way excuse, and last week I was talking about the gay community, and I know I didn't quite specify lesbian. That's because the gay community is both homosexual, or is all homosexuals, so that includes men as well as women that fall into that group. So I just used gay as the overall term to fit both. If you're offended by that, then that means you're an idiot, okay? And yeah, I don't care if idiots are offended, because idiots are offended by everything. Okay, so last week was bye week, and so there was a bunch of posts on Twitter and a bunch of stuff going on with that. And the more I saw about the stuff they were posting and all of this, the more I started to realize I guess bisexual falls into the category of nonsense as well. That's what I'm going to kind of go over in this video, is all of the nonsense surrounding the bisexual and why it's not a useful definition. Bisexuals are not consistent. Okay? They're not consistent people, so their entire that kind of defeats the purpose of them saying, hey, we're bisexual and we're always this way. No, you're not consistent, so then you can't be something or claim something about yourself if you're not consistently that thing, right? Okay, so I've got several slides. I'm going to go through these slides, and it's going to kind of be PowerPoint. Hopefully it's not too boring, but I need to go through these slides because I'm going to explain them and why it's the nonsense behind them, and these are all the things that were presented to me during the Twitter battles. Okay, so the first slide you'll see, it looks pretty like your pretty basic pie charts, and I don't know why they went with this particular approach, because it looks like a 5-year-old drew it in MS Paint or something along those lines. And they could have easily done this same chart in, like PowerPoint or Excel or any other basic your basic Microsoft Office program that can do charts, and it would be much more insightful than this currently stupid chart, because all of these pie charts at the bottom are pretty much worthless. There's no reason to have all those different pie charts. The concept they're trying to get across is any degree of attraction between, any amount of attraction would make you fall into the category of bi. So if you have anything greater than 0% attraction to someone of the same sex, and anything less than 100% attraction of just someone of the same sex. Right? So that's what the point they're trying to get across. And the problem I have with this pie chart is the word attraction. Because looking at the definition of attraction, the first definition, the act, power, or property of attracting. Definition 2, attractive quality, magnetic charm, fascination, allurement, enticement. Number 3, a person or thing that draws, attracts, allures, or entices. Number 4, a characteristic or quality that provides pleasure, attractive feature. Now, definitions 5 and 6 are more specific, and they do not apply to they cannot be applied to this chart, because they're talking about electromagnets and entertainment in general. So, because the definition of attraction uses the definition of attracts, I'm going to go to that next. So, the definition of attract is to draw by a physical force, causing or tending to cause to approach, adhere or unite, pull. It's the opposite of repelling. Second definition, to draw by appealing to the emotions or senses by stimulating interest or by exciting admiration, allure, invite. Definition 3, when it's used as a verb used without object, to possess or exert the power of attraction. Alright? Those are the definitions. Those are definitions we're working with. That's the definitions everybody uses. Now, by those definitions, was there anything about sex in either of those definitions? Was there anything about romance in either of those definitions? Or arousal, desire, trying to think of any other word that would specifically mention a non-plutonic relationship. and you won't find it within those definitions. So, using those definitions and these pie charts, you can jump to the conclusion that this would make everyone a bisexual, according to how they have it presented here. Because in order to not be a bisexual by this definition, you would have to have zero attraction to someone of the same gender, meaning you're either neutral or you hate everyone that is the same gender as you, and have 100% attraction to someone of the opposite gender. And the other thing would also have to be true. You'd have to have, or you could have 100% attraction to someone of the same gender, or to the same gender, not just someone, but to the same gender in overall, and 0% attraction to the opposite gender. What this would mean is that if you're a straight man, you can't have any male friends. If you were a straight woman, you couldn't have any woman friends. If you were a gay man, you couldn't have any women friends. If you were a gay woman, you couldn't have any male friends, because you would be attracted to those friends. You wouldn't be sexually attracted to those friends, but you would something about them is attractive to you, otherwise they wouldn't be your friends. You wouldn't have a relationship with them, because that's how attraction works. Attraction is anything. Attraction is a very broad definition. So that's that chart, and that's why that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Alright, and the next little slide I've got here is also something that somebody posted on Twitter that doesn't quite make a lot of sense to me, because if you're looking at, these are all the issues that bisexuals face. Okay, higher rates of anxiety, depression, and other mood disorders compared to heterosexuals, lesbians, and gays. Okay, so anxiety, depression, and mood disorders are generally related to brain issues or mental disorders. Anxiety is generally treated with a depressant, and depression is generally treated with a stimulant. So, because they're both anxious and depressed, and they've got general mood disorders, and it probably stems from the fact that they're not consistent, right? They don't have a consistent sexual preference or sexual partner. They're constantly moving around and unsatisfied with what they have, right? That's right. If you're attracted to both sexes, but you're only sleeping with one of those two, then it's like the grass is greener kind of a perspective, where you're always missing what you don't have. Like, oh, but it would be so much better if I had the other thing that I also enjoy. It seems to me like someone who has this kind of disposition would never be satisfied with what they have, because they can never have it all. There's always going to be something lacking, unless they're in some kind of weird relationship where they are with both at the same time, like a weird three-person relationship, and I know they have those. But generally, those end pretty badly. And statistically, people that are in a three-way relationship, two of them will be more close, and the third person will kind of be like a third wheel. And eventually, the third, less important person will be excised from the relationship, and it'll just be a relationship between the two people who had the stronger bond. That happens. I mean, there's all kinds of studies about that particular phenomenon, where there's no such thing as a three-person couple that makes it for very long. A few years at most. So again, that goes back to the inconsistency and kind of an inability to make a choice, a decision. It creates an environment where you can never be satisfied with one, because there's always the other option. Okay, the second thing on here is a higher rate of STI diagnosis compared to heterosexuals. Now, look how it says compared to heterosexuals. It doesn't say compared to heterosexuals, lesbians, and gays like the first one said. It just says compared to heterosexuals, because generally heterosexuals have less sexual partners than gays, lesbians, and bisexuals. That should be a pretty clear indicator that someone who is bisexual or even gay or lesbian, they generally have more sexual partners, right? So that's a pretty clear indicator that they have less self-control, or they have worse decision-making capabilities. So that means that they don't choose their sexual partners well, which is why there's so many well, they call them STIs. Why do they call them STIs? They used to be STDs. Is there a difference between an STD and an STI? I just started seeing that recently, like within the past month. The STI, I think that includes STDs, and maybe it's just a broader definition to include like infections that aren't really diseases but are brought about through sex. I'm not sure. So what that means to me is that these people are not choosing their sexual partners correctly. And that's why they get a higher chance of STIs, because they're not vetting their sexual partners, which means they're probably oversexed, as in they can't control themselves or their sexual urges, and so then they just jump into bed with whoever without making sure that that person is clean, without making sure that person is someone that they want to form a relationship with, or someone that they can trust. So that's generally the case, and that's generally the reason why these STIs would be higher. Now, I would assume that would also be, even though this chart doesn't say that bisexuals would also have a higher rate than lesbians and gays, although it's probably not statistically significant. And this is, in my opinion, this is because there's a greater chance of the actual transmission if you're sleeping with both men and women, because certain infections affect one gender more than the other. Basically, my point is people should be more discriminatory over who they sleep with and try to limit their partners to as little as possible, because that's how you reduce the spread of STIs. But someone who's bisexual, they're enlarging their pool of sexual partners, because they're not just limited to one gender or the other. They have their choice of any gender. And I've seen some charts that these bisexuals have printed where like where someone who's attracted to their gender and likes them but won't have sex with them because they are bi, and I'm like, that doesn't, what? The number of people that would do that sort of thing seems like a very small number who's like, well, I like you a lot, but you're bi, so I'm not, even though we could, we'd be happy together, I'm not going to sleep with you because you're bi. I mean, there might be the cases like, yeah, because that indicates you've got, you make poor decisions, or you're not consistent, or that you can't make up your mind. That might be more of the case. It's probably not specifically because they've been with both men and women. It's probably because they seem inconsistent. Higher rate of heart disease compared to heterosexuals. Not sure about that. I mean, I can't think of any reason why that would be the case, purely based on their sexual activity. The rest of these are all related to their sexual activity. That's the only one that doesn't quite make sense, and maybe it's because they overexert their... and I think, well, maybe that's got more to do with the anxiety and depression, and so they're constantly, they're in a state of extreme highs and extreme lows, and that wears on the heart, whereas generally the heart likes to be in a medium range. It doesn't like to be going to extremes for your body function, for your bodily organs, is generally bad for them, and that might be the case there. So that's not directly related to their sexcapades. All right, and the higher rate of cancer risk factors compared to heterosexuals. Yeah, because generally the LGBT community has more drugs and cigarettes and alcohol. I don't have any statistics to back that up, but it's generally the case where these people consider themselves free, and they're trying to rebel from society, and they're trying to go off and do their own thing and be special, unique snowflakes or whatever. So they have a higher tendency to expose themselves to more dangerous substances. All right, the next point is related, and it's just the lower rate of cancer screenings, which is what? Cancer screening is going to the doctor and asking them to look, to check, to make sure that you don't have cancer. I don't know what your sexual orientation has to do with that, and that implies that these people are less intelligent because they're not going to the doctor on a regular basis to check to make sure that they're healthy and they're not dying of cancer. If there's a lower rate of cancer screening, that means these people don't have enough consideration for their future, right? If you don't care about your future, then you don't go get cancer screened because, whatever, let the chips fall where they may. okay, it's more of that devil may care attitude, right? That generally is associated with the LGBT community. Okay, higher rate of tobacco use. Well, then there we go back to the cancer risk, and we go back to the, going against societal norms. A lot of these issues sound pretty self-inflicted to me. The only one that doesn't quite sound self-inflicted is the heart disease. And like I said, there could be other factors related to that as far as, the drug use and depression and anxiety and all of that. But the rest of them all sound self-induced. You can't blame your sexual lifestyle when you are doing things to damage yourself. So the next chart here is the high rates of violence against bisexuals. And this, again, seems pretty self-inflicted. And there's a reasonable explanation for this in that bisexuals are less discriminatory over who they have sex with, over who they choose as a sexual partner. In which case, then that exposes them to higher rates of rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner because they didn't vet their partner very well. They didn't discriminate because there's that whole non-preference, it basically means they have lower standards on who they sleep with, right? That's by definition, right? They generally do not have the same qualifications because at least they have, normally a heterosexual person would have opposite gender as a criteria for people that they choose to engage with sex with. And homosexual people would have, the criteria of the same gender, and so that limits their pool and all that sort of thing. It's one more check that needs to be checked before they choose to engage in a sexual activity with someone. Bisexuals don't have anything. They just clear that box and be like, yeah, it doesn't matter either way. So by definition, they have less strict standards for who they have sex with. All right, there's also another factor that goes into this is the higher anxiety and the higher depression, the higher mood swings, which can lead to erratic behavior such as rape or violence or stalking, right? Because those are mental disorders, and if you have a higher rate of mental disorder, then you're subject to other types of behavior that would fall into those mental disorders. So again, this seems pretty much self-inflicted, and it comes from the not vetting sexual partners very well, and having very low standards or having no standards at all. And they say that community action is needed to address these high intimate partners problems. And you're like, what? How is it anyone else's... why would anybody outside that community have any... I don't have a say in what your sexual partner does. Other people outside of that are not involved in your activity, so they can't help or hurt. I don't understand why they would think that somebody outside of the community is able to address this situation. It's people inside the community, inside the bisexual community. Those are the only ones who can do something about these numbers. Okay. So they need to train sexual violence and intimate partner violence providers and responders in bi competency to better serve bi survivors. That doesn't fix the issue of bi people being violated. That's only helping treat them after the fact. Educate on how rape culture provides a biophobia and over-sexualization of bi people. It's not... Okay, so rape culture is already a myth. That's already been debunked in a bunch of other videos and studies and all this nonsense. There is no rape culture. The United States highly disapproves of rape. In fact, rapists get worse treatment inside prisons than those who just there for... Even those there for murder or other egregious crimes. Rapists are treated far worse by the inmates. Even murderers who have little regard for human life despise rapists. So there can't be a rape culture if everyone despises rape, except for, I guess, rapists themselves. And the over-sexualization of bi people is not from other people. That's the bi people themselves. They're the ones being oversexed. They are oversexing themselves. That makes zero sense why it would be other people, why it would be the community that has to do something when it's actually by people themselves that are... it's again, that's that whole lack of personal responsibility and personal choice. They want to make it so that they don't have a choice. They want to pretend that they don't have a choice in the matter and that their decisions don't affect the outcomes and that they're just victims, because that helps their narrative. That helps them cope with their decisions if they tell themselves and they tell everyone else that they didn't have the choice. And then again, volunteering with those kinds of, with the SV and IPV, that's just after the fact. That's not addressing the root of the problem. That's addressing the aftermath of the violence. And same thing with the last point. That's not helping the situation. That's helping after the fact. Alright, and this is a new term that just came to my attention last week, and I don't know what this is about or what this really means, and we tried questioning the person who sent us this, and they didn't have a very good explanation, and they sent me to it was me and some other guy that were having a discussion with this lady, and she sent us to several unrelated articles that have no mention of erasure or anything along those lines, and we don't know what this is actually in regards to. So, mislabeling bi people as lesbian, gay, or straight, even when they are out as bi, like Alan Cummings or Lady Gaga, which I don't know who Alan Cummings is, and I don't care, and Lady Gaga, she was engaged to a dude, so I don't know how, and I guess she fits their definition of bisexual in that she's attracted to women but is sleeping with men. It definitely strikes me as a case that Lady Gaga is all about the attention, and the only reason she would claim bisexual is for approval by the bi community, because that's how she sells more albums and things like that. No idea who Alan Cumming is. And then the second bubble here is the denying bisexuals exist, because I just said that Lady Gaga is probably not a bisexual. She's probably just doing it for the attention and for the money. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are people who are sexually attracted to men and are sexually attracted to women. But in order to be a bisexual, you actually have to have sex with one gender or the other. Otherwise, the definition is useless. Because you can be sexually attracted to women, but then only sleep with men. I don't understand how that makes you bisexual, because it's completely ignoring the sexual part of that term. Calling bisexuals allies, I'm not sure. I think that's getting into the whole LGBT community, and I guess they don't want to be a part of that. I'm not sure what that is even supposed to mean. And again, we questioned the person who sent this on what the meaning of that is, and they didn't have a good explanation, and then they just kept sending us to articles that were unrelated. Only considering a person either gay or straight depending on the sex of the person's partner, because that's how language works. You can't be bisexual and then not have sex with just one gender. That's how language works, because if you don't, then you're completely ignoring the sexual aspect of that. Using non-inclusive language, gay marriage, or gay or lesbian couples, even when bi people are in the couple. Again, that's ignoring that whole sexual aspect. In order to be bisexual, you would have to be having sex with both genders. Alright, that's a stupid chart that doesn't make any sense, and that was the end of my slide presentation. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. I talked about the bi community and how they've got all these kind of self-inflicted problems. I mentioned that they're not consistent, because that's the whole point, right? In order to be bi, you are less consistent than someone who is heterosexual or someone who is gay or lesbian. They also seem to be unsatisfied, because that's why they don't have a preference one way or the other. They don't, and I've heard it said, they need to make a choice and they need to decide what they want. But generally, human beings can only be satisfied with one other person. That's why the family unit makes so much sense and works well. It's one person with one other person, and then their kids together. Where they're not satisfied with one person, they're not satisfied with how their life is, they're not happy in their marriage and their relationship and their kids or whatever. So, I know I was addressing the Born This Way, and I said this community, the community seems very illogical, and they have all kinds of issues above and beyond those who are not in this community, and yet they still continue to do this, which again, it's causing self-harm. It's causing all kinds of added stress and added problems that they should not subject themselves to. That's why this community seems kind of crazy. Alright? Like, the rest of it I can understand. At least there's specific definitions for homosexual and for straight relationships. The definition for the bisexual seems to be constantly changing. They're constantly trying to justify, and they're constantly... They're not satisfied. They're not even satisfied with the definition of, how they define themselves. And there's a bunch of people, like a bunch of different people had a bunch of different definitions of what makes a bi person bi and all that sort of thing. Like, it seems like every one of those people who were involved in this conversation, they all had a different definition and didn't agree with the other person's definition. And if you ever try to say that it's, sexuality has to be a part of it, they would, you either got blocked or you got yelled at or whatever and say, no, that's not the case. You're an idiot. You're ignorant. You're a bigot and homophobe or whatever. And whatever slurs that they threw at me because I said sexuality has to be a part of it. Otherwise, it can't be bisexual. It would be something like bi-attraction or something stupid like that. There has to be a sexual aspect. Otherwise, you can't say sexual in it. You can't be bisexual and then never have sex, right? Otherwise, why is the word sex in there? There has to be some kind of sexual contact. Otherwise, there's no reason for the word sex to be in it. That's how etymology works. That's how definitions work. Alright, hopefully this wasn't too boring and I didn't slip into super monotone explainy mode. Yeah, I did. I definitely did. I know I fell into that mode. Sorry this is boring. I don't care. It's Sunday and I've got to get this out there. And I'm going to end with this. Cause it may sound crazy, but it ain't no lie, baby. Bye, bye, bye.